Hey guys, tonight we're crawling under the covers of a much older bed, one that creaks, wheezes, and smells faintly of soot and chamomile. Welcome to Victorian England. It's foggy. It's candlelit. And if you thought sleep was hard now, just wait. In this world, your sleeplessness isn't a minor inconvenience, it's a sign of moral decay. You'll be judged not just for yawning, but for why you're yawning. Are you lazy? Weak? Possibly French? In the eyes of your average Victorian doctor, any of these could be the culprit. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me your city and what time it is as you're listening. I want to know who else is up past bedtime. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake in a small room, the kind with more wallpaper than wall. The pattern is dizzying. Roses? Cherubs? Exploding turnips? It's hard to say in the gaslight glow. The bed is tall, intimidatingly so, and you're buried under 4 layers of heavy blankets that appear to be woven from equal parts wool and Victorian gilt. The mattress beneath you is stiff, but also weirdly lumpy, as if it were stuffed with leftover secrets. Outside, the fog clings to the street like gossip. You hear a distant horse carriage clatter by, and from the hallway, the muffled ticking of an enormous grandfather clock. It sounds vaguely threatening, as though it's judging you for being awake at this hour. Which, let's be honest, it probably is. Victorian London is not built for sleeping. It is built for productivity, solemnity, and looking respectable in a waistcoat at all times. The idea of 8 hours of gentle rest in a well-ventilated room is suspicious. These are people who drink boiled beef tea for dinner and believe emotions can cause spinal damage. You sit up, squinting at your surroundings. There's a strange, yeasty smell in the air, something between soap, dust, and despair. Your head is slightly damp from the oppressive warmth of the bedding, but your feet are freezing. You find a candle and light it with shaking hands, immediately feeling guilty for wasting good wax. And then you see it, a framed pamphlet beside the wash basin. The Morally Upright Sleeper, Guidelines for Gentle Rest. According to this, sleep is something to be earned, deserved, even. Too much of it could signal sloth or madness. Too little might mean your soul is restless, or worse, French. You're advised to say a prayer, recite a calming poem, and absolutely never read fiction before bed. Novels, apparently, overstimulate the female brain and may lead to unladylike dreams of dancing or voting. You try to lie back down, but the pillow greets you like a sack of lumpy potatoes. Every creak of the floorboards feels like a small scandal. The clock ticks louder. Someone coughs 2 rooms over, a cough with character, perhaps tuberculosis, or just existential dread. You breathe in deeply and nearly gag. Ah yes, coal smoke mixed with chamomile. The Victorian diffuser. No one talks about it openly, but insomnia is practically an epidemic. It's just hidden under terms like nervous agitation or spiritual unrest. Doctors prescribe tonics, preachers recommend moral self-examination, and housemaids whisper about curses passed down through bad wallpaper. You lie still, realizing that, in this world, people are trying to sleep, they're just not very good at it. And the louder their clocks tick, the more their brains race. Outside your frosted window, a lamplighter shuffles past, tapping his pole against the gas lamp with slow, rhythmic movements. You watch him from bed, oddly comforted by the routine of it. If anyone in this city sleeps well, it's probably him, exhausted from miles of walking and armed with just enough soot to count as a weighted blanket. Back in bed, you give in. You pull the covers to your chin, listen to the soft click of the candle snuffing out, and let the Victorian gloom wrap around you like a second quilt. Somewhere in the house, the clock ticks on. Somewhere in the city, another soul stares at their own ceiling, equally awake, equally judged, equally wondering if tomorrow's breakfast will again involve boiled things. And that's when you realize, this isn't just bad luck. This is the beginning of something much deeper, stranger, and slightly mint-flavored. Your journey into the curious world of Victorian sleep cures has only just begun. You wake up groggy, unsure if you actually slept or if you just passed out from sheer historical overload. The sun, dim and unimpressed, peeks through the heavy curtains like it, too, would rather stay in bed. You shuffle over to the washbasin, splash your face with ice-cold water, and stare at yourself in the mirror. You look like someone who has survived a sleepover at a museum. Time to try something stronger. Downstairs, a housemaid named Agnes offers you breakfast tea and a warning: you didn't touch your tonic last night. Might explain the tossin. She hands you a small glass bottle with faded gold lettering. Dr. Penworthy's Gentle Night Elixir. The ingredients list is long, handwritten, and deeply suspicious. Laudanum, powdered valerian root, opium extract, a few Latin words that probably translate to "please don't sue," and a splash of alcohol for taste. You hesitate for the briefest moment. Then you drink. Within minutes, your limbs go warm. Your fingers tingle. Your brain feels like it's trying to swim through syrup while also reciting poetry. This must be what Victorians meant by calm. You lie back on the settee and stare at the ceiling, which seems to be pulsing slightly. The wallpaper's rose pattern begins to swirl, very gently. You feel okay? No, not sleepy, just weird. This, you learn, was completely normal. Victorian sleep tonics were a booming business. There were tonics for ladies, tonics for infants, tonics for dogs. Most of them had a similar formula: alcohol, opium, sugar, and something vaguely herbal to make it sound legitimate. They were sold in pharmacies, catalogs, and even by traveling salesmen who'd shout about divine drowsiness while juggling vials. If you were lucky, you got a nap. If you weren't, you saw colors that hadn't been invented yet. The most infamous concoction? Godfrey's Cordial. Marketed for fussy babies, it was essentially morphine in a bottle. Mothers would mix it into milk, rock the cradle, and wake up 3 hours later to find their child still asleep and possibly dreaming of algebra. The medical community eventually caught on, decades later, but at the time, it was considered parenting genius. You flip through a nearby newspaper and spot an advertisement. Barker's Midnight Relief. Soothing all nerves, guaranteed by Her Majesty's own chemist. The image features a woman reclining on a fainting couch with one arm draped dramatically over her forehead. The caption underneath reads, "For those whose minds are too alive with curiosity, romance, or the weather." Of course, not all remedies were quite so chemical. Some recommended camphor, others prescribed lettuce water. One particularly persistent theory involved boiling lettuce and drinking the water it left behind. You try this, too, mostly out of scientific curiosity. The result: a faint salad aftertaste and zero improvement. There's also a jar of sleeping salts in the cupboard, meant to be inhaled deeply before bed. You give it a sniff. It's somewhere between expired perfume and floor cleaner. Victorian chemists had a talent for mixing ingredients that smelled like moral instruction. Later, you find a little green book hidden in the parlor titled Household Receipts and Herbal Helps. Inside, recipes for sleep-inducing teas made from everything from poppies to nutmeg to crushed beetles, optional. One recipe suggests soaking a handkerchief in vinegar and tying it around your forehead to cool the hot thoughts that plague the head. You try it. You look like an extra from a tragic opera. Your thoughts remain stubbornly room temperature. What makes all this more troubling is that most Victorians believed sleep tonics weren't just medicine, they were moral correctives. To suffer from insomnia was to be spiritually unwell, possibly indulgent, definitely in need of reform. Tonics weren't just about sleep. They were about becoming a better, quieter, more agreeable human being. And preferably doing it with excellent posture. Some physicians even published public warnings that dreams might expose the true state of a person's soul. One clergyman argued that a dream featuring excessive color and dancing could be a symptom of pride. So if you were hoping for a peaceful night of dreamless rest, too bad, now you also have to worry about your subconscious being judgmental. You spend the rest of the day somewhere between napping, floating, and mildly hallucinating that Queen Victoria herself just told you to eat more toast. Your tongue is dry. Your knees feel like they've been boiled. And still, no real sleep. Just drifting. As night falls, you stand by the window, watching shadows stretch across the street. Somewhere out there, someone else is drinking from the same bottle, holding the same false hope. You raise your glass to them. Sleep is a long way off. But at least you're not alone in the fog. The fog hangs heavy again tonight, curling around the lampposts like it's trying to eavesdrop. You're sitting upright in bed, because you're afraid that lying down might make you feel too horizontal, which might make you feel too relaxed, which might lead to another night of lying awake thinking about your own breathing. That's how Victorian logic works. The rules are different here. Agnes, ever the diligent housemaid, bursts in before you can so much as sigh. She throws a thick shawl over your shoulders and heads straight for the window. Don't even think about opening it, she says with the urgency of someone saving you from mortal peril. The night air's out there. You blink. The night air? She nods, deadly serious. Might chill your lungs. Get inside you. Turn your blood sour. She pulls the curtains shut with a thud, as if they're shielding you from some ghostly breeze with criminal intent. You've heard a lot of theories about bad sleep. But this one, it's not just folklore, it's common Victorian health doctrine. According to the era's top minds, night air is inherently dangerous. While sunshine is virtuous and cleansing, darkness apparently makes air toxic. The kind of thing that causes lung rot, nervous collapse, or worse, dreams you can't morally justify in public. Ventilation. Suspicious. Open windows. Reckless. A cross breeze? Basically inviting the grim reaper inside for tea. This is why your bedroom is stuffed tighter than a Christmas pudding. The windows are sealed. The curtains are thick and dusty. A heavy velvet pelmet hangs like a judge's robe above the frame. Somewhere under the bed, an old slipper might still be hosting mildew from 1852. You don't breathe the air so much as chew it. But this isn't just about superstition. There's a deeper fear here, of invisible things. Germs haven't quite been accepted yet, but miasmas are the trend. A vague, villainous mist thought to cause everything from indigestion to death. The Victorians believed that bad smells carried disease, and nighttime, being naturally more humid and quiet, was obviously when evil mists would sneak in. You look around the room. There's dried lavender hanging near the door. A little pouch of herbs sits beneath your pillow. On the fireplace mantel, a shallow dish of vinegar with a sponge in it, meant to absorb malignant airs. A faint scent of pickled flowers fills the room. It's like trying to fall asleep inside a salad. For extra protection, your host insists on burning incense made of charcoal, sage, and something that smells alarmingly like old onions. Supposedly, this cleanses the room. In reality, it smells like you've offended a witch. Still, there's a kind of logic to it. In a world without air purifiers or germ theory, people did what they could with what they had. And what they had was mostly vinegar, paranoia, and thick curtains. To make matters worse, fire is the only acceptable heat source. So you're left balancing between the chill of the feared night air and the suffocating warmth of a coal-burning fireplace. The result: you're either shivering or sweating, or both. You kick off a blanket, then immediately regret it and pull it back up. Your body temperature is a battlefield. There are stories, long forgotten by modern science, about people catching the wasting from sleeping too close to a cracked window. One popular medical pamphlet warns, the breeze may carry with it the sighs of the consumptive, the fogs of fever, or the melancholy of a stranger's death. It's poetry. It's also deeply unhelpful. To combat this, some households install what's called a ventilator rose, a decorative brass disc drilled into the ceiling to allow air to pass through but not too freely. You spot one above your head. It looks harmless. It also looks like it hasn't been cleaned since Queen Victoria was still in diapers. Later, you wander down to the parlor where the old family dog is sleeping under the faint warmth of a radiator pipe. He looks peaceful. You look jealous. Someone once wrote that dogs are immune to night air. It was a best-selling health tip in 1870. No one ever explained why. Back in bed, the room feels heavier than ever. Not just from the thick walls or musty sheets, but from all the fear packed into the space between breaths. You try not to think about the air. You try not to think about your lungs. You try not to think about thinking. The curtains rustle slightly in the breeze you're sure can't be there. And then you remember what Agnes said, before she turned down your lamp and left you to the shadows. Best keep your mouth closed while you sleep. Just in case. The bed is winning. You lie flat on your back, staring at the ceiling like it might blink first. The mattress beneath you groans every time you move, as if offended. You'd like to think it's just old, but honestly, it feels personal. You shift your weight slightly, and a loud sproing echoes through the quiet. Somewhere across the hallway, a clock ticks judgmentally. This is not a bed designed for sleep. This is a bed designed for discipline. Victorian mattresses are feats of engineering in the same way that corsets are fashion. Complex, unforgiving, and prone to leave emotional scars. You're nestled into a thick slab of horsehair, stuffed into a canvas shell that hasn't seen a laundry day since the Crimean War. It smells faintly of regret, mothballs, and possibly ham. The springs underneath poke through like accusations. You try not to move. You try not to exist. And that's just the mattress. The pillows are an entirely different offense. One is stiff as a paving stone. The other sinks so dramatically under your head that you're fairly certain it has given up on life. There's no in-between. You stack them, rearrange them, even try sleeping without them, but each configuration leads to the same conclusion. Your neck is now Victorian, too. Stiff, uncomfortable, and filled with misplaced moral superiority. The bedding itself is thick and heavy, with layers upon layers of wool blankets that feel like sleeping under a wet overcoat. You suspect at least one of them was previously a horse blanket. Tucking yourself in is less a cozy ritual and more like preparing for burial by textiles. Somewhere in the middle of the night, you become entangled. One foot slips out from under the blanket fortress, and you feel the full wrath of the night air scrape across your toes. You gasp. You tuck. You live another hour. What's worse, you're not alone in here. No, really, you're not alone. You hear scratching, tiny movements, the gentle rustle of something with legs. You try to convince yourself it's just the bed settling. Beds do that, right? Settle, whisper, wiggle, right? The truth is, many Victorian beds came with uninvited guests, fleas, mites, the occasional mouse. And worst of all, bedbugs. Entire cleaning manuals were dedicated to their removal. One suggested boiling the bed frame in vinegar. Another recommended bathing the mattress in turpentine and prayer. You consider both. In wealthier homes, servants were tasked with flipping mattresses weekly and scouring them with stiff brushes. In less fortunate homes, you simply learned to sleep through the itching. If you mentioned your discomfort, you might be handed a sachet of dried herbs or worse, told that a little suffering builds character. Which, in Victorian English, translates roughly to, stop whining. You shift again, this time slower, trying not to disturb the lurking mattress spirits. But the bed frame lets out a long groan, theatrical, even. It's made of iron, with ornate curls and delicate flourishes that feel deeply unnecessary. A decorative brass knob at the foot of the bed falls off with a soft clink. You stare at it. You've lost this battle. Some Victorians believed that the material of the bed itself could affect sleep. Iron was thought to repel excessive magnetic influences, while wooden beds were warmer, more traditional, and slightly more flammable. There were even recommendations on which direction to sleep. Head toward the north for spiritual calm, east for dreams of divine inspiration, west if you're feeling rebellious. You're currently pointed northeast, which apparently invites confusion and mild digestive distress. Great. You pull the covers over your face and try to focus on something calming. The gentle creak of floorboards. The whisper of wind outside the walls. The sound of someone, not you, snoring peacefully in another room. You picture a modern mattress. Memory foam. Temperature control. No horsehair. You think about your pillow. Your real pillow. Then you remember the final insult of this night, the chamber pot under the bed. You didn't even notice it earlier. But now that you know it's there, you can't unknow it. It waits silently, judging your bladder, your dreams, your entire life. You roll over, defeated, entangled in scratchy sheets, face half buried in a pillow that smells like boiled socks and lavender sachets. A distant bell rings to signal the hour. 3 chimes. The bed creaks. You creak. Sleep remains as distant as ever. Morning arrives without your permission. Not as a sunrise, but as a grayish smear across the top of the drapes. You don't remember sleeping. At best, you blacked out somewhere between your 6th pillow adjustment and that moment you began arguing with the bedsheets like they were alive. You're sore in places you didn't know you had places. Even your earlobes feel tired. Agnes greets you at the doorway, chirpy as ever. Still tossing, are we? She says with the unbothered tone of someone who sleeps like a granite monument. Might be time for a visit to the doctor. You blink at her. Doctor. She nods, already handing you your boots. The kind what does leeches or powders, depending on how fussy you are. You don't argue. Because at this point, you'd agree to be whacked with a baguette if someone promised it would help. The doctor's office is part library, part apothecary, and part amateur art gallery of disturbing anatomical drawings. A fire crackles in the corner. The air smells of burnt sugar, chalk, and whatever's inside that enormous glass jar labeled spleens, assorted. You try not to look at it. Dr. Brimstone, yes, that's actually his name, enters with the energy of a man who's been awake since 4 a.m. and doesn't approve of people who haven't. He wears a brown waistcoat, pince-nez, and the perpetual squint of someone suspicious of modernity. So, he says, peering at you like you're an undercooked potato. Not sleeping. You nod. He clucks sympathetically and begins to ask questions. Are you prone to melancholy? Have you been exposed to too many foreign novels? Do your dreams involve ducks? Are you a fan of pickled onions? You answer truthfully. He seems disappointed. Dr. Brimstone moves on to the exam. He taps your knees, checks your pulse, and then, without warning, produces a small silver mirror, which he uses to inspect your tongue. He nods solemnly. Your temperament leans choleric, possibly bilious, definitely damp. You have no idea what that means. He prescribes you a series of treatments, each more questionable than the last. A warm milk enema, to settle your internal wind. A 3 drops of mercury tincture in your tea, to agitate the torpid humors. A leeches, for balance. Always leeches. You ask if any of this will actually help you sleep. He considers. Possibly. But more importantly, it will keep you occupied until the exhaustion takes over naturally. You're sent home with a linen pouch of dried herbs, a bottle of bitter liquid that smells like burnt tree bark, and instructions to avoid emotional overstimulation, which includes loud noises, rich food, laughter, and all mention of Paris. Victorian medicine, it turns out, is a peculiar dance between ancient superstition and enthusiastic poisoning. Doctors are often more focused on realigning your moral compass than fixing your body. Sleeplessness is rarely treated as a symptom. It's more like an attitude problem, one best handled with prayer, punishment, or powdered chalk. And yet, some remedies are oddly gentle. You're told to bathe your feet in warm mustard water before bed, to rub camphor into your temples, to eat boiled lettuce for dinner. Some believe soaking your hands in vinegar helps ground the nerves. You try it. Your hands smell like salad. Your nerves remain airborne. At one point, Dr. Brimstone's assistant, a young woman with ink-stained fingers and an unusually calm demeanor, pulls you aside and whispers, "Try reading poetry by gaslight, but not anything too French." She slips you a dog-eared book of melancholy verses. You thank her. Back in your room that evening, you dutifully follow the instructions. The mustard foot bath is weirdly comforting. The herbal tonic makes your tongue go numb. You light a gas lamp and read poetry until the words blur. You avoid Paris entirely. And for a moment, just a flicker, You think it might be working. You feel the edges of your thoughts soften. Your limbs stop vibrating with tired tension. Sleep tiptoes close, curious, almost ready to join you. Then the bed creaks. A spring jabs your rib. A carriage rumbles by outside, and a neighbor begins a coughing solo in the key of consumption. You lie back, arms sprawled, mind racing. Somewhere, Dr. Brimstone is probably writing a paper about how your liver is too sarcastic. You've made peace with the fact that the bed hates you. The pillows are traitorous. The curtains are plotting. And the mattress may or may not be alive. But tonight brings a new element to your ongoing Victorian slumber saga, science. Sort of. Agnes knocks on your door just after supper, holding what looks like a shiny cushion attached to a wire. It's new, she says with cautious pride. The doctor says it helps regulate your magnetic ether. You stare. It's buzzing. She shrugs. That means it's working. The latest trend among the sleep-deprived elite is a glorious mix of cutting-edge pseudoscience and full-on electrical improv. You're told the body has a magnetic field, and that insomnia might be caused by disruptions in your personal polarity. The solution: lie on this mildly electrified mat and hope for the best. You do. Of course you do. You lie back, arms stiff at your sides, the electric mat buzzing softly beneath you. It doesn't hurt, exactly, but your spine does feel like it's trying to hum along. The lights flicker once, possibly in solidarity. You feel tingly, a little itchy, and vaguely like a recharged potato. It's not relaxing, but it is distracting. Victorians are obsessed with electricity. Not just for lighting, but for healing. There are electric belts, magnetic headbands, galvanic socks. Some devices promise to excite the nerves to induce slumber, while others suggest the opposite, calming the nerves by zapping them gently into submission. Sleep, it seems, is just one solid jolt away. In one corner of the room sits another promising device, the ether inhaler. It's a squat, metal contraption with a rubber hose and a faint whiff of chemistry class. Dr. Brimstone called it a gentle sedative for the over-imaginative. You're supposed to breathe it in until your limbs go limp and your thoughts float away like lazy smoke. You give it a try. 3 breaths in, your mouth goes dry. 5 breaths, the floor tilts. 7, and you're certain you just heard the wallpaper whisper something about ducks. The ether works, in a way. But sleep. Not quite. You're somewhere between conscious and curious. You imagine the inside of your brain glowing faintly, like a lantern swinging in a fog. Electricity and ether weren't just fringe ideas. Prominent Victorian physicians debated their use publicly. Some called ether a miracle. Others warned it led to moral vacancy and dreams of licentious nature. Historians still argue over whether these treatments were sincere attempts at medicine or elaborate Victorian party tricks. You'd believe either. There's also a theory floating around your host's parlor that sleep can be encouraged by a controlled dose of fear. One gentleman recommends reading mildly unnerving ghost stories to lull the nervous system into retreat. You try this too. It's oddly effective, at least until the house creaks a bit too loudly and you remember you're staying in a 19th century home with a mysterious locked attic. So now you're electric, anesthetized, and mildly haunted. Still no sleep. You finally drag yourself to the window and crack it just enough to let in the faintest whiff of London night. The air is cold, but fresh. Somewhere down the street, someone is playing a violin out of tune. You close your eyes, imagining the notes drifting upward like steam. Behind you, the electric mat clicks off with a tired sigh. The hose from the ether device has fallen to the floor, curling like a sleepy snake. You crawl into bed, not hopeful, but at least entertained by the sheer effort everyone's putting in. Maybe the point isn't to sleep. Maybe the point is to try everything, to believe in something, even if it's a mattress full of magnets. You lie still. A light buzz lingers in your fingertips. Your dreams, when they come, smell faintly of vinegar and static. You've noticed a pattern. Every time you mention that you still can't sleep, someone blames your gender. Tonight, as you sip a lukewarm mug of barley tea and try not to scream into your itchy lace collar, your host's aunt, a woman with strong opinions and a hat that resembles an entire salad, leans over and whispers, "Well, dear, that's just a woman's condition. You feel too much." You blink. She nods sagely, as though she's just solved sleep itself. Welcome to the Victorian Lady's Guide to Not Sleeping, where insomnia isn't just a problem, it's practically a rite of passage for respectable women. If you're tired, it's because you've been reading novels, or letting your imagination wander, or thinking about something unpleasant, like politics or cheese. According to the books scattered around the drawing room, women are biologically delicate, prone to overstimulation, victims of their own emotions. Sleep, therefore, is a fragile gift that must be earned through good behavior and quiet thoughts. One pamphlet advises, avoid romance novels, dancing, and citrus fruits before bed. Another warns against embroidery after dusk. One particularly stern volume recommends sleeping with a Bible under your pillow and a cold compress on your forehead to soothe the fiery female mind. You try that. You wake up with the imprint of Leviticus on your cheek and no noticeable change in your anxiety levels. The term hysteria is whispered around the household like a ghost story. No one defines it clearly, but it seems to cover everything from irritability to opinions. Doctors warn that if you don't rest properly, your uterus might wander, which, medically speaking, is not a thing, but they really believed it was. There are diagrams. You find one in Dr. Brimstone's office labeled the roaming womb. It looks like a jellyfish in a corset. You stop asking questions. Instead, you're handed a new remedy, the nerve pillow. It's a little satin sachet filled with hops, lavender, and female calmatives. You place it gently over your eyes. It smells like sadness and flowers. You breathe in deeply. It does absolutely nothing. Your host insists on dimming all the lamps early and banning all laughter after supper. Too stimulating, she says. Might ignite the nerves. You're not sure what that means, but you're starting to feel like your entire personality is one long diagnosis. There's also the matter of fashion. Every layer of your clothing is designed to not breathe. Your corset restricts your lungs. Your nightgown feels like wearing a curtain. Your petticoats are still clinging to your calves with the desperation of damp laundry. Sleep. You can barely sit. Some women of the era were advised to bathe in vinegar or walk backwards in the garden before bed to undo the emotional events of the day. You try the garden trick. You trip over a goose. No one is surprised. Still, some remedies show a glimmer of empathy. A visiting cousin, with quiet eyes and ink-stained fingers, gives you a book of poems and a soft warning. Skip the ones about tragic heroines. Stick to the ones about fog. You read them under a blanket, the gas lamp flickering gently beside you. You start to feel, not sleepy exactly, but soothed. The truth is, women's insomnia in the Victorian era wasn't treated as a physical problem. It was moral, social, even political. You weren't tired because you were overworked or anxious. You were tired because you were too much, too curious, too emotional, too alive. And the solutions? Shrink yourself. Soften your thoughts. Sleep not as rest, but as obedience. You lie in bed later that night, the nerve pillow falling somewhere between your nose and your moral compass. You try to imagine a world where sleep is allowed to be simple. A need, not a verdict. A soft place to land, not another rule to follow. Outside, the wind rustles the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a cat wails like it's got secrets. You close your eyes and let the thoughts swirl gently, like tea leaves in warm water. You don't fall asleep yet. But at least now, no one's blaming your ovaries. Tonight, you climb the grand staircase with a different plan. No herbal tonics. No leeches. No magnetic devices strapped to your lower back. Tonight, you're infiltrating the upper crust. The drawing room is dimly lit by oil lamps, the kind that make everyone look mysteriously wealthier than they really are. The air smells like cherrywood smoke and something expensive you can't quite name. A clock ticks softly from the mantel, not in an aggressive way, but like it knows you're trying to relax and is politely timing you. You're here because you've heard a theory: the wealthier you are, the better you sleep. It makes sense. Soft beds. Silk pajamas. No coal dust in your soup. Surely that leads to dreamy slumber and a refreshed morning glow. You're immediately offered a glass of port. It settles the nerves, someone says, handing it to you with the confidence of a man who's never worried about rent. You sip it. It's syrupy, sweet, and tastes like someone soaked raisins in philosophy. Apparently, Victorians believed alcohol in the evening helped quiet the mind. Modern science would like a word, but you're already onto your second sip. In one corner of the room, a woman reclines on a velvet chaise, her lap full of embroidery and ambition. She's humming a lullaby under her breath, one that's shockingly passive-aggressive. Sleep now, little angel, you've done nothing at all / you neither succeeded nor risked a great fall. You're not sure whether to be comforted or lightly insulted. The fire crackles. The furniture sighs. A butler glides by with a tray of warm milk and almond biscuits. You start to see the appeal. If sleep doesn't come, at least you're failing to sleep in style. One gentleman, monocle in place, lectures at length about his personal bedtime protocol. Exactly 2 glasses of sherry, a chapter of maritime history, and 5 minutes of staring at a portrait of Lord Byron to remind myself I'm not him. He claims it works every time. His wife confirms this by quietly rolling her eyes and mouthing, "He snores like a warship." The bedroom itself is a dream. Polished floors. Feather mattress. Sheets that don't bite. There's a bed canopy the size of a small opera house and a faint lavender mist puffing from some unseen contraption near the fireplace. You suspect the air itself is richer here. And the pillow. It holds your head like it's reading your biography. Of course, even among the elite, sleep isn't guaranteed. You overhear hushed whispers about Lady Featherstone's midnight restlessness and Lord Brinkley's nocturnal agitations. These people don't say insomnia, they say things like a touch of sleepless sophistication. Still, they have tools you've never seen in the downstairs quarters. There's a tiny harp beside the bed, meant to be plucked softly until the player dozes off. There's a powder puff infused with soothing vapors for dabbing gently at the temples. One guest recommends placing a lemon rind under your pillow to repel melancholia. Another insists on airing out his slippers for precisely 7 minutes before bed. For balance. These rituals, you realize, are less about effectiveness and more about comfort. Performance sleep. Sleep as status. And weirdly, kind of works. You're not exactly drowsy, but you are unbothered. As if all the port and perfumed linens have wrapped around your anxiety and gently muffled it. You lie down in the enormous bed and pull the blanket to your chin. The ceiling has little golden stars painted across it. Somewhere nearby, a grandfather clock hums its approval. And for the first time since arriving in this creaky, overprescribed, lavender-scented era, you almost drift off. Until a voice from the next room whispers loudly, "Did you hear about the maid who sleepwalks?" Your eyes snap open. Of course. Of course there's a sleepwalking maid. You roll onto your side, fluff the silken pillow, and try not to think about it. Not about the maid, not about the port, not about Lord Byron, and definitely not about lemon rinds. You don't fall asleep. But you're definitely resting in a higher tax bracket. You wake up to the sound of a child screaming, "I don't want to be morally corrected." Which, frankly, is the most relatable thing you've heard in days. Today, you're exploring the Victorian philosophy of children's sleep. Spoiler alert, it's not about comfort. It's about obedience. The nursery is decorated in pastel wallpaper and quiet dread. A wooden cradle creaks slowly in the corner. Toys are minimal, mostly made of tin, string, or stern moral lessons. You find a book titled Bedtime Virtues for the Young, featuring cautionary tales of children who stayed up too late and consequently fell into sin, debt, or smallpox. The nanny, Miss Gladwell, greets you with a tight smile and the brisk efficiency of a woman who's taught 50 children and forgiven none. We put the little ones down by 8, she says, with a warm sponge bath, a verse from Proverbs, and, if they've been very good, a whisper of ginger cordial. You peek into the child's cot. It's small, hard, and inexplicably damp on one side. The pillow looks like it lost a fight with a sack of flour. The blanket is tucked in with military precision, presumably to suppress rebellion. Victorian children were expected to be asleep early and stay asleep quietly. Sleep wasn't rest, it was training, preparing them to grow into properly exhausted adults who could hold a fork correctly and suppress opinions. If a child cried at night, there were several acceptable responses. Ignore it. Builds resilience. Apply camphor oil. Builds fortitude. Offer a spoonful of Godfrey's cordial. Yes, the same opium-based syrup used for fussy infants. Builds silence. You try reading one of their bedtime books. The story involves a girl named Clara who once stayed awake after curfew and was later eaten by metaphorical wolves. The moral: obedience brings pillows. Rebellion brings ruin. You quietly close the book and hug it to your chest, uncertain whether to cry or start a revolution. But here's the wild part: some of it worked. Not because it was wise, but because children were exhausted. They walked to school in stiff shoes. They had chores. They ate meat jelly and boiled vegetables. If you'd been lectured by 4 different adults and made to memorize a psalm about modesty, you'd sleep too, eventually. One boy, Thomas, tells you in hushed tones that he pretends to sleep just to escape the nightly sermon. His younger sister brags about learning to snore on command so no one bothers her. You nod solemnly. These are survival skills. In wealthier homes, children were sometimes given more luxurious sleeping arrangements, nurseries with rocking chairs, lullaby music boxes, and embroidered pillows that say things like softness through submission. In poorer households, 3 siblings might share one straw bed in the kitchen corner, using each other for warmth and bargaining rights. And yet, sleep still evaded many of them. Nightmares weren't treated as psychological events. They were dismissed as bad digestion or spiritual weakness. Some parents hung sprigs of dried thyme over the bed to ward off troubling visions. Others recommended a few sips of ale. One notable midwife swore by wrapping the child's feet in cabbage leaves. For balance, obviously. Academic debate continues to this day over whether Victorian children slept better or worse than we do now. Some historians argue they were tougher and better trained. Others note the high childhood mortality rate and the constant fear of chimney work or tuberculosis weren't exactly soothing bedtime influences. But one thing's clear: bedtime wasn't tender. It was a daily test. Later that evening, you help tuck in the youngest child, a girl named Eleanor who solemnly informs you she's already accepted her fate as a future governess. You gently place the moral of the week pillow under her head and hand her a toy lamb. She falls asleep within minutes. You're impressed, until you see her clutching a tiny book under the blankets. The Secret Garden. She's breaking the rules. You smile. Maybe there's hope for this generation. You tiptoe out of the nursery, closing the door behind you. The hallway is quiet, except for the ticking of a nearby clock and the soft sigh of wind pressing against the window panes. You too are tired, but not like them. They sleep because they must. You lie awake because you still can't. You spend the next day covered in soot. Not metaphorically, actually covered. Your sleeves are gray, your fingernails are black, and your lungs feel like they've been politely coal-dusted. That's what happens when you follow a maid named Elsie down into the belly of a Victorian kitchen, where the fire never really dies and sleep is more of a theory than a lifestyle. Elsie doesn't sleep much. None of them do. The household staff wake before dawn, hours before the upstairs bells ring, and finish long after the last candle's been snuffed. Sleep is caught in flickers, 5 minutes here, 20 there, usually on a bench or beside the stove, surrounded by potato peels and lukewarm tea. You ask her when she last had a full night's rest. She laughs so hard she chokes on her own apron. Maybe when Queen Victoria was still a child, she says. This is the other side of the Victorian sleep story, the part history books tidy up with phrases like rigorous work ethic and stoic service. In truth, it's relentless. For the working class, sleep is a luxury, and one often interrupted by bells, demands, or the shriek of a chamber pot dropped from the second floor. Factory workers fare no better. You visit a cotton mill on the edge of town, where the air buzzes with lint and machinery. The sound alone could keep anyone awake for days. The floor manager, Mr. Grigsby, brags about 12-hour shifts and workers so efficient they can thread a bobbin with their eyes closed. Which is good, because most of them are half asleep. You speak to Thomas, age 14, who admits to dozing off while operating a spinning frame. "Lost a bit of my thumb," he says, remarkably cheerful. "But I dreamt of cheese, so that was nice." Children like Thomas work alongside adults, because exhaustion doesn't discriminate. The factories operate in shifts, but that doesn't mean rest. It means alternating patterns of tired. Morning shift. You're cold and stiff. Night shift. You're dizzy and shadow-eyed. Either way, your dreams come late, if at all, and they usually smell like grease. Some workers swear by tricks to help them fall asleep faster during their few stolen hours. A chewing bread slowly in bed. A rubbing lard on their feet. A whispering numbers backward from 500 while thinking of sheep. Spoiler: the sheep in these parts are usually imaginary and unionized. No one talks about insomnia here because there's no time to have it. You either collapse from fatigue or keep moving. The line between being awake and being unconscious is thin, blurry, and sometimes accompanied by a broom to the ribs from a supervisor. And yet, there's community. In the cramped attic rooms above the servants' quarters, people share stories while soaking their feet in wash basins. They laugh about snoring, argue over the best corner of the bed, and pass around shared advice on how to keep the dreams nice. Think of pie, someone suggests. Or the sea. Or kissing someone with clean hands. You take a moment and watch Elsie finally collapse onto her cot. Her eyes shut before her head hits the thin straw mattress. Her arms fall to her sides, palms up, like she's surrendering to sleep as much as inviting it. For all its hardship, there's something honest here. These people don't have dream dictionaries or velvet pillows. No nerve pillows. No poetry by gaslight. They've got fatigue, plain and sharp, and when they sleep, it's real. It's deep. It's the kind that isn't earned by moral virtue, but by sheer survival. Back in your own room, you sit quietly in the dark, thinking about the girl in the nursery and the boy in the factory. About Elsie's soot-streaked hands. About sleep not as a ritual, but as a necessity. Something you fight for, not something you're gifted. You crawl under the blanket, still smelling faintly of ash and starch. You're tired. Bone tired. You might actually sleep tonight. Or you might just lie here, thinking about lard-footed sheep. You thought you'd seen it all, the vinegar compresses, the electric mattress, the foot baths that smelled like mustard and regret. But nothing prepares you for the moment someone gestures to a bed wrapped in copper coils, draped in celestial charts, and says, with utmost seriousness, "This one aligns your soul with the universe." You've officially entered the magnetic mattress era. The inventor's name is Mr. Hargrove. He welcomes you into his drawing room/laboratory with a bow so theatrical you worry briefly for his spine. Sleep, he proclaims, is not just a state of rest. It is a cosmic negotiation. You nod, because that's what people do when confronted with someone wearing velvet slippers and goggles at tea time. Hargrove's pride and joy is what he calls the Somnia Liner, a bed frame embedded with magnets, calibrated to the etheric pulse of the northern hemisphere. The mattress itself is stuffed with a blend of wool, iron shavings, dried marjoram, and something he won't identify. It vibrates slightly, he warns, but only when mercury is direct. You lie down carefully. The coils hum faintly. The room is filled with a soft glow from a lamp shaded in blue silk. Above your head, an astrological map of the heavens. The air smells like polished brass and damp optimism. You wait. And wait. The mattress buzzes beneath you. Your fingertips tingle. Your back feels unusually straight. Your dreams, according to Hargrove, should now be filtering through the dream gate in your third vertebra. They aren't. But you do start to feel oddly calm, like your body is being gently rearranged into a more symmetrical version of itself. You wouldn't say you're falling asleep, but you're definitely falling into something. Hargrove, sipping tea from a beaker, explains that magnetic beds gained popularity after a series of published pamphlets claimed sleep disturbances were the result of north-south misalignment. These theories were often backed up by precisely zero data, but people were desperate, and desperate people love magnets. Of course, not all magnetic devices were so subtle. Some were wearable, belts, gloves, even headbands promising cranial serenity. One ad you find folded in Hargrove's desk shows a smiling woman wearing what appears to be a steel tiara. The caption reads, "For the overwrought wife and the disobedient child." You wonder how many people wore those to family dinners. Back on the mattress, your thoughts begin to drift, not into dreams, but into an oddly vivid recollection of the time you once fell asleep in a hammock and woke up convinced your legs were on backwards. The feeling is similar, disorienting, tingly, less relaxed, and more mildly pickled. Eventually, the humming stops. You sit up. Hargrove peers at you over his goggles. Did your aura shift? You have no idea. He nods approvingly anyway. Later that evening, as you climb into your own bed, springless, joyless, vaguely damp, you find yourself weirdly missing the hum. Not because it helped you sleep, but because it felt like trying. Like someone, somewhere, believed sleep was something that could be solved, like a math problem or an especially stubborn drawer. Historians still debate whether magnetic mattresses offered any real benefit. Some claim the iron fillings were placebo. Others argue the act of believing in the cure was half the battle. A few skeptics suggest the vibrations just made people too dizzy to stay awake. But here's what you know. For a few moments, you weren't fighting your pillow. You weren't counting the ceiling cracks. You were just lying there, buzzing gently, hoping the stars might do you a favor. That night, you close your eyes and imagine your spine perfectly aligned with the constellation Lyra. You imagine magnets pulling your thoughts into neat little rows. You imagine the Earth's core humming you a lullaby. You still don't fall asleep. But your aura? Absolutely pristine. You never thought you'd miss the electric mattress, or the vinegar compress, or even the cabbage foot wrap suggestion. But after spending one day in a Victorian sanitarium for the sleep-afflicted, you're prepared to personally apologize to every dubious cure you've ever scoffed at. The place is called Rosewell House, which sounds cozy until you see it. Gray stone walls, narrow windows, hallways that echo too much. Everything smells faintly of mint, starch, and institutional regret. You're greeted by a nurse whose expression says she hasn't blinked since the Crimean War. Her cap is perfectly crisp. Her voice is softer than expected. "Please remove your shoes," she says. "We don't like clatter." You're led to your room, which is surprisingly neat. Clean sheets. A single rose in a jar. A clock ticking very, very slowly. You ask about the treatment plan, hoping for perhaps a warm bath and some reading time. Instead, she brings a wet sheet. "Hydrotherapy," she says, already wrapping it around your arms like she's preparing a sandwich. It calms the nerves by quieting the blood. You are now swaddled like a damp burrito and left on a narrow bed under a mountain of wool blankets. It's meant to induce tranquil stillness, but mostly it just makes you reconsider all your life choices, particularly the one where you said, "Sure, let's try the sanitarium." After 30 minutes, the nurse returns and unwraps you without a word. You sit up slowly, slightly pickled and a bit wrinkled. She hands you a glass of barley water. It tastes like sadness. The next treatment. Isolation. You're placed in a restroom, a silent, padded chamber with nothing but a chair, a rug, and a small Bible with all the fiery parts bookmarked. The goal is mental stillness. You're not allowed to talk, or read, or even knit. You stare at the wall and quietly begin to wonder if the wallpaper is judging you. In the room next door, someone begins humming a hymn. You're told not to respond. Later, a doctor visits. He's kind-eyed but distractingly shiny at the forehead. He tells you your insomnia may stem from intellectual overuse and recommends a week of passive recreation. You ask what that means. He suggests walking slowly in circles. You nod. He beams. There's group therapy in the garden that afternoon. 5 women, 1 man, and a Labrador who may or may not be an emotional support animal. You sit in a circle and discuss the dangers of overthinking before bed. One woman swears by chamomile compresses. Another insists all her sleep returned after switching to positive Bible verses only. The man has a theory involving magnets, moonlight, and celery. You say nothing. You're still slightly damp. That night, you're given a spoonful of sleep syrup and asked to lie down in a room with blackout curtains and a recording of ocean sounds being played on a strange contraption called a mechanical tide mimic. It sounds like someone shuffling bedsheets while eating celery. Still, it's oddly comforting. You almost drift off. Almost. Then the nurse returns to check your pulse. Then again to check your posture. Then again to rotate your pillow for moral freshness. You lie awake, swaddled in more blankets than physics should allow, your arms tucked like a politely mummified librarian. The ticking clock is slower here, but it still ticks. Historians remain unsure how effective these clinics truly were. Some patients swore by them. Others left exactly as sleepless as they arrived, but quieter about it. Sanitariums offered structure, calm, and the kind of enforced boredom that eventually wears down your wakefulness through sheer repetition. Eventually, you leave Rosewell House with cleaner fingernails, a pamphlet titled "Stillness is Strength," and a lavender sprig pressed between the pages. You're not more rested, but you're more peacefully tired, which might be a start. You return to your usual room, lie on your usual unforgiving mattress, and let the ordinary noises of your night wrap around you. A soft creak, a faint tick, a long sigh that might be yours. And somehow, in the hum of familiar discomfort, you feel a little less alone in your sleeplessness. By now, you've tried nearly everything: tonics, magnets, wet linens, whispered prayers, and pillows that smell like moths and misplaced faith. So tonight, you turn your attention to something less physical but no less peculiar: your dreams. Because in Victorian England, dreams aren't just dreams. They are messages, warnings, metaphors, and, sometimes, diagnoses. You're given a small notebook with a lace trim and the instruction to keep it on your nightstand. Write down your dreams the moment you wake, your host instructs, before they vanish into morning fog. You're skeptical, but you nod. Because by now, if someone handed you a spoonful of dirt and promised dreamless sleep, you'd chew it thoughtfully and ask for the recipe. The first night, you try your best. You wake groggy at dawn with a faint memory of dancing spoons and someone shouting about marmalade. You scribble this down. Later, you're told this means a deep-seated anxiety about social propriety. Dream interpretation is serious business here. Entire books are written about it. Big, heavy tomes with titles like Visions and Their Moral Roots or a Dictionary of the Subconscious. For the educated sleeper, there are pamphlets that describe over 300 dream symbols. For example, a fish means fertility, a ladder means ambition, a flying pig means indigestion or possibly witchcraft. You ask what it means if you dream about sleeping. The answer: death is near, or else you've achieved perfect peace. Great. You start paying closer attention. One night, you dream about getting lost in a hedge maze while being followed by a duck wearing a monocle. You report this to the household dream expert, a cousin with strong opinions and a pocket full of crystals. She nods gravely. You fear judgment. Possibly from a nobleman. Possibly from yourself. Another night, you dream of floating above a city made entirely of teacups. No one's quite sure what that means, but someone suggests drinking less barley water before bed. Some Victorians even visit professional Onira critics, dream interpreters who charge by the symbol. You imagine sitting in a candlelit room while someone in half-moon spectacles nods solemnly as you recount your nightmare involving runaway muffins. But dreams aren't just decoded, they're treated. There are recommended diets for calming dreams, lots of boiled roots and no cheese after dusk, bedtime recitations to ward off unruly visions, and even custom sleep garments infused with herbs to scent the soul toward serenity. Still, the mystery remains. Why are your dreams so strange? Victorian science offers many theories. Some blame excess stomach bile. Others point to magnetic interference from the moon. A few suspect it's your furniture arrangement. Historians today still debate how seriously these interpretations were taken. Some households saw dreams as divine messages. Others thought them annoying byproducts of a wandering brain. Either way, they paid attention. They wrote them down. They whispered about them over porridge. You begin to notice something, too. Even if the meanings are dubious, the act of recording your dreams gives them shape. You start to look forward to the notebook, to the morning ritual. You wake up not feeling rested, but slightly more anchored. Like your dreams, bizarre as they are, belong somewhere. On one rare night, you dream of sleeping soundly in a bed made of moss. No ticking clocks. No restless legs. No judgmental pillows. Just soft green quiet. You write it down with a little star beside it. That morning, over tea, someone asks what it means. You smile. Probably nothing, you say. But it was nice. And for once, no one tries to interpret it. Tonight, sleep feels further away than usual. You've counted sheep. You've recited poetry. You've tried not thinking, which, ironically, made you think harder. So when your host casually mentions a séance happening down the street, you say the most dangerous Victorian phrase imaginable. Why not? You're led to a parlor 3 blocks over, lit entirely by candles and heavy with the scent of cloves and furniture polish. The furniture has been pushed to the sides. At the center, a round table covered in velvet, ringed with 6 people in various shades of skepticism and velvet. The medium, Madame Elodie, wears rings on every finger and a hat large enough to host several sparrows. She claims the dead are very talkative tonight. You're not sure what you believe, but you're here for sleep, not spiritual clarity. You join hands with the group. The lights dim further, and then the table creaks. Madame Elodie begins humming, a low, vibrating note that sounds like a kettle in a bad mood. She rolls her eyes back and mutters something about the veil thinning. You suppress the urge to cough. Moments later, she gasps and declares, "A presence is near." The room holds its breath. You whisper, ask it if it knows any sleep hacks. She glares at you, then turns to the group. A woman. Her name begins with M. She is holding tea leaves. She says, "Try valerian root." You blink. The ghost is giving herbal advice. Everyone nods like this is completely normal. As it turns out, many Victorians were deeply into spiritualism, not just for closure, but for guidance. If science couldn't cure insomnia, maybe Aunt Margaret could. From beyond. Spiritualist circles often incorporated wellness into their rituals. Herbal teas were served at séances. Sleep talismans were sold alongside ghostwriting kits. You once saw a pamphlet titled, "Dream Better with the Dead." Some believed restless spirits could disturb a household's sleep. Others claimed they were the source of dreams. It wasn't uncommon for mediums to prescribe nighttime rituals to calm the spirit flow. These included lavender sachets, clockwise walking around your bed, and sleeping with a silver coin under your tongue. You skip that one. Back at the séance, someone has begun weeping softly. The table is rattling, either due to spirit contact or a rather enthusiastic foot tapper named Mr. Bellamy. Madame Elodie claims the spirit is fading but wants you to try a linen pillowcase stuffed with lemon balm. Noted. After the séance ends, you linger in the parlor, sipping weak peppermint tea and talking with a widow who swears her insomnia disappeared the night her late husband told her to forgive her neighbor. You ask if the neighbor apologized. She shrugs. Didn't need to. Spirits sorted it. You walk home under a sky full of low-hanging clouds and distant chimneys. The air smells of coal and old leaves. You still don't believe in ghosts, not really, but you do believe in moments of quiet, in conversations with people you never expected to meet, and in the strange comfort of shared mysteries. Back in your room, you wrap yourself in the usual blanket burrito and try one of the séance tips, a warm cup of lemon balm tea, sipped slowly in bed. You don't feel any spirits, but you do feel still. The kind of still that doesn't rush towards sleep, but also doesn't run from it. You turn out the light. The floor creaks. A draft moves the curtain. For half a second, you wonder if Madame Elodie followed you home. But no, just the wind. And maybe, just maybe, a suggestion from someone long gone. You wake up groggy, bleary-eyed, and vaguely scented with lemon balm. You sit up slowly and realize something extraordinary. The sun is higher than usual, and you don't remember waking up in the middle of the night. No ticking clock at 2 a.m., no battle with your blankets, no ghost-related herbal advice. Did you actually sleep? You blink at the ceiling. The smug cherub is still there, but this time, it looks less judgmental and more surprised. You whisper a cautious good morning and shuffle toward the window. Outside, London is doing its usual thing. Fog drifting like lazy ghosts, chimneys exhaling, carriages clattering, but you're different. You feel rested-ish. Today is your last day in this creaky, gas-lit chapter of history. You pack your things, your lace-trimmed dream journal, your half-empty tonic bottle, your sketch of the magnetic mattress. Agnes helps you fold the extra wool blankets, which now feel more like souvenirs than suffocation. You even keep the camphor pillow sachet, because it smells oddly like closure. As you prepare to leave, the household gathers to say goodbye in the only way Victorians know how. Quiet nods, vague well wishes, and one elderly aunt pressing a hard biscuit into your palm like a blessing. Sleep is a journey, she tells you. Sometimes the detours are the point. You step outside, your boots clicking on the damp stone steps. The fog curls around your ankles like it's reluctant to let you go. You walk slowly, past bakeries just opening, past a milk cart creaking by, past a row of newspapers with headlines about moral decline and barometric pressure. You think about everything you've learned, about the things people will try when sleep becomes a mystery, about how culture wraps itself around even the most natural human need, and about how tiredness, when shared, somehow becomes more bearable. Historians still argue over whether the Victorians actually slept worse than we do. Some point to the long hours, the strange remedies, the obsession with dreams. Others argue that people today are just as tired, only now, we have push notifications and LED lights instead of leeches and laudanum. But you know the truth. Sleep isn't just about silence or softness or darkness. It's about permission. To rest. To let go. To be still without guilt. The Victorians never quite figured that part out. But in their own awkward, cabbage-footed way, they were trying. You return to your own bed, your own time, your own slightly crumpled pillow. The air is cooler. The sheets are cotton. Your mattress does not hum or judge or require vinegar. And as you lie down, you smile just a little, because while you may still not sleep perfectly, at least you're not alone in the search. You close your eyes. And this time, you let yourself sleep without trying so hard to deserve it. And now, as the final candle flickers out, and the last tick of the clock fades softly into the dark, you find yourself drifting, slowly, gently, back into your own time, your own bed, your own quiet breath. No more corsets. No more copper coils. No more herbal tonics with a suspicious aftertaste. Just the hush of night and the soft rhythm of your thoughts quieting down. You feel the weight of blankets that don't smother, the stillness of air that doesn't judge, the silence that asks nothing of you. You're safe here. You're no longer pacing the creaky floors of history, no longer deciphering the dreams of distant centuries. You've wandered through fog and folklore, through ticking clocks and velvet-curtained nights, and now the story slows. Let your body sink. Let your mind unravel like ribbon in warm hands. The journey's done. You've earned your rest.